My life with Leo felt like a pocket full of sunshine. That's what I used to tell him. He would just smile that big, wide smile of his and say, "Well, Anna, you are the sun." We had only been married for 3 months, but those 3 months felt like a whole lifetime of happiness all bundled up into one. We lived in a small blue house with a crooked porch swing at the edge of town. Every morning Leo would make pancakes, and he always made one in the shape of a lopsided heart just for me. It was our little secret, our silly morning ritual. Life was simple, but it was our simple, and it was perfect in every way that mattered. We spent our days exploring. Leo loved the woods behind our house. He knew the name of every tree and every bird that sang its song from the high branches. He would hold my hand, his hand warm and strong inside of mine, and point out a shy deer peeking through the leaves or a fat rabbit hopping across our path. He taught me how to skip stones across the little creek that gurgled and giggled its way through the forest. He said the secret was finding a stone that was perfectly flat and smooth, just like a good thought. We would talk for hours about everything and nothing at all, until the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Our evenings were quiet and cozy. We would sit on that crooked porch swing, a big quilt wrapped around our shoulders, and watch the stars pop out one by one in the dark velvet sky. Leo would tell me stories, silly made-up tales about the man in the moon and his lonesome dog. He had a way of making the whole world feel magical, like it was a storybook and we were the main characters. I would rest my head on his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and I would think that there was no safer, happier place in the entire world than right there, next to him. I remember one afternoon, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. The sky turned a dark, bruised purple, and the rain came down in sheets. Instead of hiding inside, Leo grabbed my hand and pulled me out into the yard. We danced in the rain, spinning and laughing until we were soaked to the bone and our clothes stuck to our skin. He lifted me up and spun me around, his laughter mixing with the sound of the thunder. In that moment, I felt so alive, so completely and utterly happy. I thought we had forever to dance in the rain. I thought our pocketful of sunshine would never, ever run out. But then came the day the music died. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesdays were the day Leo always brought me a single daisy from Mrs. Gable's garden down the street. That morning, he made heart-shaped pancakes just like always. He kissed my forehead and told me he loved me more than all the stars in the sky. He went off to his job at the town library, whistling a cheerful tune. I spent the day humming that same tune, tidying our little blue house and waiting for him to come home. I had baked his favorite lemon cake, its sweet smell filling every room. The sun started to set, and the sky turned that familiar shade of orange and pink, but Leo didn't come home. The porch swing sat empty and still. I told myself he was just late, that maybe he had stopped to help someone or had gotten lost in a good book. But a little knot of worry started to twist in my stomach. It was a cold, tight feeling that I had never felt before. The lemon cake sat on the counter, untouched. The daisy he was supposed to bring me was still in Mrs. Gable's garden. The silence in the house grew louder and louder with each passing minute, a heavy, suffocating blanket. It was Sheriff Brody who came to the door. His face was grim, and he held his hat in his hands, twisting the brim. He didn't have to say a word. I knew from the sadness in his eyes. He said there had been an accident, a sudden sickness. No one knew why. 1 minute Leo was shelving books, and the next he was just gone. The world tilted and spun, and the floor felt like it was falling away from under my feet. My heart didn't just break, it felt like it shattered into a million tiny, sharp pieces. The sunshine was gone, my pocket was empty. All I remember after that is a blur of sorrow. The world lost all its color, turning into shades of gray. The birds in the woods stopped singing, or maybe I just stopped hearing them. The creek no longer gurgled, it just seemed to weep. Sleeping in our bed alone was the hardest part. The space beside me was so big and so cold. I would wrap myself in his favorite old sweater, trying to find the last bit of his scent, the last piece of him. But it was fading, just like the memory of his laughter. The music was gone, and all that was left was a painful, unending silence. My sadness was a heavy cloak I couldn't take off. I walked through my days in a fog, feeling like a ghost in my own life. But soon, something else started to creep into the edges of my sorrow. It started as a whisper, a quiet murmur that I would catch when I walked through town to buy bread. I would see people gathered in small groups, their heads close together. When they saw me, they would stop talking and just stare. Their eyes were not filled with pity anymore. They were filled with something else, something cold and sharp. The whispers followed me like a shadow I couldn't shake. The whispers grew louder, turning into words I could hear. "Such a shame," someone would say, just loud enough for me to overhear at the market. "So young. And they were just married." Then another voice would add, "Too convenient if you ask me. A young wife, a sudden death." The words were like little stones being thrown at me, each one leaving a small stinging bruise. Mrs. Gable, who used to smile at me, now crossed the street to avoid me. The baker, who once gave me an extra cookie, now barely met my eyes as he handed me my change. I was no longer just a grieving widow. In their eyes, I was something else, something terrible. The accusation was never spoken to my face, not at first. It was in the turned backs, the locked doors, the way mothers pulled their children closer when I walked by. I was a monster in their story, the newlywed who had tired of her husband and done the unthinkable. My heart, already shattered, felt like it was being ground into dust. How could they think that? How could they look at my love for Leo, a love as big and bright as the sun, and twist it into something so dark and ugly? The loneliness was a cold, empty room with no doors and no windows. I was trapped inside with their ugly words. I felt so lost, adrift in a sea of suspicion. I would sit on the porch swing, the one we had shared so many times, and I would feel a million miles away from everyone. I wanted to scream, to tell them all they were wrong, that my love for Leo was real and true, and that my heart was broken without him. But who would listen? Their minds were already made up. The whispers had become their truth. I was alone, completely and utterly alone, with only the memory of Leo and the crushing weight of their blame. The town that had once felt like home now felt like a prison. In the darkest moments, when the whispers felt too loud and the loneliness was too heavy, I would close my eyes and remember. I would remember the good things, the happy times. I would remember the feel of Leo's hand in mine as we walked through the woods. I would remember the taste of his lopsided, heart-shaped pancakes and the sound of his laughter as we danced in the rain. These memories were my only shield against the town's cold stares. They were small flickers of light in a world that had gone completely dark, reminding me of the truth I held in my own heart. Our love was real, and I would not let them tarnish it. One day, I forced myself to go to the library, the last place Leo had been. It was painful to walk through those doors, to see the empty space where he used to sit. As I stood there, lost in a sad memory, a quiet voice said my name. "Anna?" I turned and saw Mr. Henderson, the old man who ran the town's small bookshop. He was a kind man with gentle eyes behind thick glasses. He had always been fond of Leo, and they would spend hours talking about old books and poetry. He looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't see suspicion or judgment in someone's eyes. I only saw kindness. "I don't believe a word they're saying," he said softly, his voice full of warmth. "I knew Leo, and I know how much he loved you. Anyone with eyes could see it. Love like that doesn't just turn into something ugly." A single tear rolled down my cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of relief. It was the feeling of a heavy weight being lifted, just a little. To have just one person believe me, one person see the truth, felt like a lifeline. It was a single flicker of hope, but it was enough to make me feel like I could breathe again. Mr. Henderson listened as I told him everything, the words tumbling out of me. I told him about our perfect days and about the sudden, awful emptiness. I told him about the whispers and the cold shoulders. He just nodded, his gentle eyes never leaving my face. "The truth has a way of coming out, my dear," he said when I was finished. "But sometimes it needs a little help. Leo was my friend, and you were his whole world. I will help you, Anna. We will find out what really happened. We will make them see the truth." For the first time since the music died, I felt a tiny spark of strength. I wasn't alone anymore. Hope had found me.